Hello, it's Anna Hill here with the Farming Today podcast. This time, animals and antibiotics. A new report shows the UK is cutting its use of antibiotics for livestock. That may be good news for reducing our resistance to life-saving drugs. But could we do more by changing the way meat is produced? We'll have more on that in just a moment. First today, the winners of this year's BBC Food and Farming Awards have been announced. The Farming for the Future category has been awarded to Charlie and Angus Buchanan Smith. They run a regenerative farm and restaurant in the Pentland Hills outside Edinburgh. The brothers raise native breeds of cattle, sheep and pigs and grow fruit and vegetables in their no-dig market garden. The judges, our own Charlotte Smith and actress Mally Harries, who plays Natasha in The Archers, went to visit the Free Company.
This is the market garden. This used to just be one large area of pasture, and the first thing we did was we planted 1,000 trees in these hedgerow formations that surround the individual plots. So they're all a mixture of native trees. We put them in straight away for nature, but also as little windbreaks. We're about 1,000 feet here, so we're quite exposed. We're on an almost north-facing slope, and we need to try and create little microclimates that were more sheltered and more favourable for growing veg.
And what kind of fruit and veg do you grow here?
Everything from leaves, brassicas, alliums, roots, carrots, beetroots, kohlrabis. We have now about 150 apple trees, and they're all native ancient varieties of Scottish apples. There's always going to be something because we have such a diverse range growing out here.
And does this serve the restaurant? Is everything you need in the restaurant here, or do you have to buy in?
There's a few things that we don't grow enough of year-round, but this time of year, 95% of what we need is right out here.
And congratulations to Charlie Buchanan Smith. And you can hear more on all the finalists in a special episode of the food programme this Friday on Radio 4 at 11 o'clock. Now, all week we're taking a global perspective on farming as delegates at COP30 in Brazil discuss food production and reducing its impact on the climate. One UK businessman has come up with a system for harvesting the straw left over from rice. It's usually allowed to rot in the fields or it's burnt, but Craig Jamieson has developed a straw tractor, a special machine to harvest it. It was launched in the Philippines last month and farmers are now trialling it.
There's about 1 billion tonnes of this straw produced mostly in Asia every year, and a huge amount of that is just being wasted. And so we try to understand, why are the farmers burning it? Why are the farmers just leaving it to rot? Why can't something more productive be done to upcycle it? And so I decided to actually set something up that could offer a practical solution to that.
So just tell us a little bit about this straw tractor. How does it work and what's it actually doing?
So this pollution is coming from the straw because farmers can't collect it. If you use a baling machine, it's going to get bogged down in these flooded rice fields. So what we've done is developed a special machine. It's on caterpillar tracks, which spread the weight of the machine and enable it to get into those boggy fields. And so they get a nice clean field after harvest, without all that straw clogging up the system, and then they can get started on their next crop sooner.
And what is the rice straw used for?
Some people use it for livestock feed, but it's not very nutritious. You can add additives to it to slightly improve it. But there are other uses that are potentially more profitable and more sustainable, like growing mushrooms on it. And you can also get a co-product of mushroom composts, which is good for the soil, good for growing more crops. We are using it for animal bedding. We've developed a particular kind of bedding that is very sustainable. It reduces the emissions from manure from animals. And we are also, as a trial, collaborating with a company in India that has technologies for making biochar, which is like bit like charcoal, but instead of burning it as fuel, you put it into the soil and it stores carbon and it builds the fertility of the soil. So there's a number of end uses rather like that.
Initially, the rice straw being left in the field was actually emitting methane. Now you're using it to actually soak up carbon.
Absolutely, yeah. We can take this problem, this challenge, and make it actually into a surprising solution for climate change. So it's benefiting the climate by storing carbon or by producing products that would potentially displace very polluting established products. So meat alternatives could come from mushrooms, compost could be used instead of artificial fertilizer to build the soil fertility and avoid pollution and help farmers at the same time, which is critical.
Craig Jamieson. The use of antibiotics in treating livestock in the UK has fallen, according to a new report published by the Veterinary Medicines Directorate, which is a government agency. In a moment, we'll be talking to one of the scientists involved. Using high levels of antibiotics in farming can lead to people developing resistance to life-saving antibiotics when they're ill. The Alliance to Save Our Antibiotics, which was set up to reduce antibiotic use in farm animals through better livestock husbandry, has just published its own report into antibiotic drug use, particularly in pigs and poultry. Colleen Noonan is the Policy and Science Manager at the Alliance.
Well, we very much welcome the reductions that the pig industry and other farmers have made, and this has contributed to reductions in antibiotic resistance. However, the levels that are still occurring in the pig industry today are significantly higher than in some other European countries where pig husbandry standards are higher than they are in the UK.
Your report also concentrates specifically on drug use in poultry and the use of ionophores. Now, ionophores are classed as an anti-parasitic drug, not an antibiotic. So why do you think they're a particular problem?
Well, ionophores are classed by regulators in that way, but they are antibiotics, and for instance they are classed as antibiotics by the Food and Drug Administration in the United States, and they are referred to in the scientific literature as antibiotics. They attack parasites, they also attack bacteria.
So what is your concern then about the use of ionophores and the link to human health?
The reason that we are concerned about this is precisely because ionophores do have an effect on bacteria. They can actually create resistance in those bacteria to ionophores, and various scientific studies have now shown that this resistance can be linked to resistance to medically important antibiotics. When this evidence started to emerge about 10 years ago, the Norwegian poultry industry voluntarily gave up using ionophores, and they saw this type of resistance to medically important antibiotics disappear from their poultry.
Well, I'll just read you what the Poultry Council has said, because we asked them to give us their opinion on this. And they say ionophores are not antibiotics, they are antiparasitics. They're an animal-only treatment that are classed as feed additives in legislation. And they say they have no impact on human health. They also say they haven't seen any evidence to suggest that ionophore use is linked to a reduction in effectiveness of or increased resistance to antibiotics.
Yes, well, there are many studies in the scientific literature referring to ionophores as antibiotics. Now, it is true that regulators in the UK and the EU treat them differently to other antibiotics, and so this is why, for example, they are not included in farm antibiotic sales data. But the data that we've obtained through a Freedom of Information request shows that total use of ionophores in poultry is 17 times higher than the total use of all medically important antibiotics in poultry, and it's about 40% higher than the total use of all medically important antibiotics in all UK farm animal species. We would like to see the routine preventative use of ionophores phased out.
One of the backers of your group, the Alliance to Save Our Antibiotics, is the Soil Association, which represents organic farmers. So have you got an agenda here to make farmers go organic and therefore not use antibiotics?
The agenda is definitely to improve animal health in order to reduce the need for antibiotics. So we were founded by the Soil Association, Compassion in World Farming and sustain. It isn't a case of saying that we want to replace all current production with organic production, but it is definitely the case that organic has led the way on this issue for decades.
Colleen Noonan there. Well, as I mentioned, a new report published by the Veterinary Medicines Directorate says the use of antibiotics in livestock in the UK has fallen, and the country remains one of the lowest prescribers of veterinary antibiotics in Europe. The report also says clinical evidence from the last 10 years shows that using less antibiotic treatments in animals means they respond better when the drugs are used. Dr. Kitty Healy is head of the Veterinary Medicines Directorate team looking at antimicrobial resistance, or AMR.
The overall national picture is made up from lots of different farming sectors. So we have some increases, some small upticks in a number of different sectors, while at the same time we have some significant reductions in other sectors, such as the fish sectors. And this is relating to challenges in diseases by and large, as well as some challenging weather conditions, which can influence the diseases faced by vets and farmers.
Why has this drop happened? Is it because actively the government has been asking farmers to use less antibiotic, or is it because husbandry practices are changing?
Well, I think the two are connected. Certainly over the last 10 years, we saw a very large drop. And that was around the time that the government's input on reducing the burden, trying to mitigate the risk of AMR, really stepped up. But as part of that, the farming sectors and the veterinary profession came together to form a targets task force. And those targets have led to a real focus, reducing the need to use antibiotics so that they're only used when they really need to be used.
And is that true, though? Are farmers really only using antibiotics when they need to?
Absolutely. There has been a huge culture shift in the farming sectors. I think that it's really important that we don't make any assumptions about the fact that a levelling off means that we've reached the lowest we can go.
We've just been talking to the Alliance to Save Our Antibiotics, and we've been hearing about the use of ionophores in poultry. Now, ionophores are used as an anti-parasitic drug. The Alliance says that they should be considered as antibiotics. Do you think they should be included in the legislation as an antibiotic?
Well, ionophores are definitely something that we have our eye on. They're relevant in the wider picture. And there is a mixed picture in terms of what the literature says. There is some scientific literature which says that it is a significant contributory factor, and there is other scientific literature which is less supportive. And so from our perspective, it's a mixed picture and what we would actually class as an area where we need to have better evidence.
UK legislation says antibiotics must not be used to compensate for poor husbandry practices. How can you guarantee that that isn't happening?
That's something which is taken forward in a lot of the work that farming sectors are doing in their commitments under the Targets Task Force. We have lots of farm assurance schemes, and we also mustn't forget that veterinary surgeons are the only people who can prescribe antibiotics. And so there are checks and balances in place. And of course, we commission research ourselves. So can anybody give you a guarantee? I think that would be a difficult thing to do. But the important thing is the change in the culture, or at least the evolution in the culture of an expectation of it is only acceptable to use antimicrobials when they are absolutely necessary.
Dr. Kitty Healy from the Veterinary Medicines Directorate. That's all from us today. I'm Anna Hill. The producer was Rebecca Rooney. Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.